Let's launch an AWS EC2 instance. So let's create our virtual private cloud. So we go to VPC, or you can search VPC and go to this particular service. So we have some VPCs built in for the sample sandbox account, so we won't bother with this VPC. So we will click on this your VPCs. So we have some already configured VPC, but again we don't use this one, and we will create our own VPC by clicking the create VPC. So you have VPC only and VPC and more, so you have to supply a name tag and the IPv4 CIDR block size. So let's type in my first VPC, my first VPC. Then for the IPv4 CIDR, so we'll just make use of what is suggested here. Of course, you can select your own CIDR, but again, for the purposes of this demonstration, let's select. So we'll make use of 10.0.0.0/24. So we leave IPv6, we leave other default settings like tenancy. Okay, it's good to have some tags in, so we could create additional tags, but we'll just leave with the default with the key name and its value. So we'll click on the create VPC. So we have successfully created our virtual private cloud named my first VPC. So it has its VPC ID. Then we have the IPv4 CIDR that we can confirm. So just take note of the main routing table that is automatically created, RTB and this particular ID. Other than that, so we'll just take note of the routing table and the IPv4 CIDR that we have configured for this VPC. So next we go to subnets. So right directly below your VPC, so we click subnets. So there are presently configured subnets, but we don't mind them and we will create our own subnet. So we click create subnet. So we will select our VPC. So it's my first VPC with this particular CIDR that we can confirm. So we can just name it as my first subnet. Let's say 01 and availability zone. So we don't have really preference, but we can select 1A. So the AZ or availability zone will be on this US East 1A. For the IPv4 CIDR block, so let's just divide the main block or CIDR block into two, and we'll make use of the first subnet. So here we'll type in 10.0.0.0/25. Okay, so simply dividing or having to subnet it from main /24 to /25. And for the key, again we'll just settle for the name and its value or the default, and we will review. Once okay, so we will click and create the subnet. So if we go back to subnets, so we'll see that our subnet is created. So let's click on it. So we have the subnet ID. It's on the US East 1 with the following route table that's associated on this particular VPC, or under this VPC. The AZ or availability zone is 1A and the CIDR is 10.0.0/25, and the state is available. It's also showing for how many IPv4 address are available to be used for this particular subnet. Next, we just verify the route table that our subnet is associated with. So ending with 4E1. So we go to route tables. So there is an existing route table that is created for this sandbox, but our focus here is on the route table that is under our VPC or 4E1. So if we click on this particular routing table, so we have the routes that is presently configured or in this particular table. So 10.0.0.0/24, and you have the subnet associations. So you'll have our my first subnet that is here. So run tables. So also you can put in some name on this route table. So let's say my first route table. So save, just to really describe this particular route table. Now let's go back again inside to this route table, and I don't know if you've noticed that under the routes, so the destination that is aware of is only this particular subnet 10.0.0/24. However, or the destination is going to the internet, or the traffic that is the intended destination will be going outside this network, then any resources that is under this particular or using this routing table won't be able to. So that's our objective later once we have created the internet gateway. In other way to explain it, so this subnet, my first subnet, is practically a private subnet still, because it any resources that will be associated within this subnet has that particular routing table, and that routing table is only able to help for destinations that are within the local network 10.0.0/24. However, if any resource wanted to go to the internet or vice versa, any traffic inbound to that particular resource, then that will be unreachable because the routing table doesn't have any destinations that is going to the internet. So we need to create an internet gateway. So remember our VPC F5D or my first VPC, so internet gateway. So create an internet gateway. So again, following the name, my first internet gateway. Again, this naming is just for this demonstration purposes. So the name and the value for the tag, so create internet gateway. So once the gateway is created, so the action that is needed is you need this gateway or internet gateway to be attached to our VPC. So when I click attach the VPC, so those VPC that have already internet gateway, so if you notice we have an existing VPC, so there are two VPCs, but that VPC has already an internet gateway attached to it, so you cannot attach another internet gateway. So it's a one-to-one in that scenario. So this VPC don't have any internet gateway, our my first VPC, so therefore we can attach to this VPC. So click attach internet gateway. So we have our internet gateway. So just remember the internet gateway ID, so ABFC. So we go back to the route tables and we can attach or so-called point routes going to the internet to that internet gateway. So we can do that by going to the routing table, selecting the routing table that we want to edit, which in our case is my first route table. Under the routes, then we can go and click edit. So we click edit routes and we add a route. So the destination will be any and the target will be internet gateway. So we can select this internet gateway ABFC or my first internet gateway in the drop down. So nothing much that we can configure. So destination and target, then click save changes. So now that our VPC subnets, routing table, and internet gateway is settled. So the next will be preparing the elastic IP. So we can go to elastic IP and allocate or click allocate elastic IP address. So in this region, US East 1, so using Amazon's pool of IPv4 address, so you can add tags here, let's say for the name and the, let's say, Windows elastic IP. Okay, so 01 for example, then that will be our assignment for our elastic compute cloud or EC2 instance. So click allocate. So now we have an elastic IP address that is ready to be associated. So again, allocate is we will request or get some IPv4 or public IPv4 address from the pool of Amazon's address. Then later on, the word associate is we will associate the public IP to our resource. So in our scenario, we don't have a resource yet, which is the EC2 Elastic Compute Cloud. So later on, we will just associate this elastic IP address. So next will be, if you scroll down, so settle or configure security groups. So there is an existing or default security group, but then again, if we follow this demonstration, we will create our own security group. So SG for the security group underscore, let's say Windows, okay, example, okay, or Windows EC2. Okay, so again, the intention for the security group is to be used by this instance. So for description, we can just put, then the VPC, we need to select our my first VPC. So inbound rules, I would want an RDP or remote desktop protocol allowed to this EC2 instance that we will later configure. So TCP port range will be the default 3389. Source will be any. Okay, for security purposes soon you can configure this to the trusted IPs, but of course this is demonstration purposes. So allow RDP to our Windows EC2 instance. Okay, then outbound we are okay with this one, and we'll create the security group. Of course we can have this name as consistent with the previous resources that we have tags, then click create security group. So we have our security group created. So that's the name, the ID 5D5, description. We have one permission entry for inbound, which is only allowing 3389. Of course, it depends on the kind of role your EC2 instance would be. For my case is will just be, or this demonstration scenario will just to be remote. Of course outbound allows anything outbound, so that is the default. Then we will configure the key pair. So next we will go to EC2. So of course you notice that's a shortcut here, or we can type EC2. So just to show you that you can type EC2 and the service will come up. What are the related service for EC2? And we are here at the EC2 dashboard. So our objective first is to create key pair. Then later on we'll create the instance or launch an instance. So we'll click on the key pair, click on create key pair. So Windows, put in the name, so EC2 01 KP, so key pair. So we'll have this PEM is okay for this, and new tag will be name and the key pair name or value. Okay, so PEM or PPK, so I'll select PEM. Okay, so RSA, then you'll have create key pair. So when you click on the create key pair, it asks you to save one part of that pair, so the private key, to your local computer. So of course you need to place or save this file to a location, and don't forget to have this file, because whenever we need to access our instance, we do need this key pair. So make sure you can remember where you save this key pair or the part of that key pair. So now at this moment, after preparing what we call the prerequisites, okay, so we have VPC, we have the subnets, we check on the routing table or the route table, we have created an internet gateway, then edit our routing table to add the routes for any route going to this internet gateway. Then we allocate an EIP, then we have the security groups, then we have our key pair. Then we are now ready to go to launching an EC2 instance. So we can do that by going up or scrolling up to instances and clicking on this. So we don't have any instances launched or created. So we can do that by clicking on the launch instances. Okay, let us do that. So we have this instance, so we just name it as simple. Okay, we can name it as my first EC2 instance, or you can have Windows-EC2-01 instance. Again, for this one is for demonstration purposes. So first is in the name. Next is on the Amazon image or the operating system that you would like to use. So AMI stands for Amazon Machine Image. So you have some selections here, but of course, to make it short, we will select Windows again for this demonstration. So Windows, and Amazon is giving us or providing us some choices. Okay, so we could select the latest, which is 2022. So base. So we have free tier eligible here. So you'll see description as Microsoft Windows Server 2022. The architecture is 64-bit. The provider of this image is a verified provider. Of course, it's from Amazon. Next will be the instance type. So the instance type basically will be the selection of the hardware specifications. Okay, so you have a number of instance types that you can choose from T2, and the list goes on and on. Again, and not the coverage for this video. So I'll select this instance type for now, again for demonstration, but of course during your installation you have to take note of the OS minimum hardware requirements, and you have to at least fulfill, or obviously you have to increase the resources. Okay, so again for this demonstration we just settle for T2 micro. Then we have the key pair, so this is the part that we have pre-created. Of course, there is a create new key pair here, so in case you've forgotten to create the key pair, AWS is happily giving you the opportunity to create one. So for ours, we have prepared. Next will be network settings. So if you take a look, if you don't edit, so it will have the assignments for this VPC, auto assign, public IP, enable, security group. So we don't want to do that. Okay, so we have prepared a security group already, and we have a planned elastic IP for that resource. So we need to click on edit, so we can start editing the network settings. So VPC should be our my first VPC. So the subnet should be our my first subnet. We'll disable the auto assign public IP. So for the security groups, so we have already pre-created. So again, you can create security group in case you forgot to do it. Then you can just rename this security group to a more friendlier name. So select an existing security group, and we'll select this one, the security group that we have created, SG Windows EC2. Let's take a peek on the advanced network configuration. We don't need that. Okay, again, for the purposes of this demonstration, we can put in more storage, the applicable storage that you need. Again, for demonstration, we don't need that. And then we have some additional or advanced configuration. So we just take a look, but again, we don't need this yet. Okay, or not covered by this video, but obviously these are very helpful or needed settings in the EC2. For example, instance profile, you'll have the shutdown behavior, so on and so forth. So these are some settings that you do need to set on a production environment. So the number of instances, I only need one, and it provides you some summary. Okay, so that you are selecting this Windows server, the instance type is T2 micro, and so on and so forth. And you can click on, once you verified that you have correctly configured or you have chosen what you need or what you want for this EC2 instance, then you can click on the launch instance. Okay, so it says that successfully initiated. So it's not like it's done. So initiated the launch of the instance. So we can go on and go back to the instances and take a look or refresh our instance page. And as you can see, it's still showing pending. So we have our my first EC2 instance with this ID, with this instance type, and it's on US East 1A, and it's now it's running. So let's give it like another 4 or 5 minutes to really load up, and then we can go and connect to this particular instance. I just wanted to show you some connection options for our instances or instance. So when you select this instance, so go to action, connect. So you have some few choices. Session manager, which is not yet ready for this instance. RDP client, so we can download the RDP file and decrypt the password, but then again, it is on a private IP connection. So we don't have any other instance that we can remote into and then from there remote to this instance. We don't have a bastion host or some form of jump host. So this is not applicable for us. Then we have the EC2 serial console. Then in the future videos we'll have that. So for our instance that is having a private IP, so 10.0.0.62, we do need to assign that elastic IP that we have allocated. So the term is you need to associate the public IP to this instance. So we can do the association of elastic IP to this instance by going down and finding the elastic IP. So remember, this is our elastic IP. So let's say my first instance EIP for the name. Then we check on the checkbox, then go to action and associate an elastic IP address. So which do we want to associate? Our elastic IP address is to an instance. So there are some cases that we can associate an EIP to another interface, but for our scenario is an instance. So scroll down. So we have instance. So we will select our my first EC2 instance. Then click on associate. So if we go back to our instance, so we go instances and click on the instance ID. So you'll notice that just a while ago it has only a private IPv4 address. So now once we have associated the elastic IP to this instance, so this instance reflects the public IP that has or that was carried by the elastic IP. So therefore, if we click connect, or we can go back to instances and checkbox, then actions, then connect, and specifically choose the RDP client. So now it carries a public IP. So we can now decrypt the password. So it has the default administrator username, and the password is only be able to be viewed upon if we click on the get password and supply the private key file that we have downloaded just now in the creation of the key pair. So that is why keeping that key pair or placing it where we can remember it and retrieve it is important to connect to our EC2. I've uploaded the private key. So this is the name, if you can remember. So we scroll down, so click on decrypt password. So if your private key file is the one that matches this pair, it can decrypt the password and it will show you the password for this Windows EC2 machine. So username and password, and we have public IP. So all are set for us to connect into this machine. So one thing just to verify, so you go to instance, if the security group is applied to this instance. So if you go to instance and you scroll down and click on security, take a look that the security group is applied to this instance. And remember, we have allowed inbound RDP protocol 3389 to this instance. So by right, so with the IP, with the credentials, and with the security group, there should be nothing that is blocking us or stopping us from connecting remotely to this instance. So I will now make use of remote desktop connection in Windows. So typing in or copying the public IP, placing it here. So click connect. Okay, so if the credentials is shown, so meaning to say our security group is working. So administrator, then we copy the very long password, and hopefully that we can log in to our EC2 instance. So click OK, or you can double check if our copying is okay, then click OK. And we have the host name EC2 something. Click yes, and hoping that we can see that Windows. And yes, I'll just minimize this. We'll just wait for it to completely launch, and we'll just make sure that it is indeed Windows Server 2022. Alright, here is our EC2 instance. So I can maximize it, but again, so no point. So we just have to understand that the machine is loading slow because of course our instance type is on a very low level. So 1 vCPU, 1B, or the T2 micro. Okay, so we'll just go to system and just verify, or we can take a look and above. There's nothing here. Then we'll just go to system. Okay, so perhaps it's just still loading, and you can see it's here. So T2 micro, and you go to advanced system settings. Okay, so let's just endure with our low specs machine. So we have our system properties. As you click the advanced system settings, the computer name, then the hardware, etc. So we close this. Okay, so this is this one. You scroll, then if you go down or scroll down, then we have the Windows Server edition. So Windows Server 2022 data center version 21H2, and yes, we have successfully launched an EC2 instance in AWS.